Green beans sitting on a grocery store shelf look perfectly fine. But that plastic bag is hiding something the produce manager doesn't want you to think about. Those beans got picked days ago, shipped hundreds of miles, and lost most of their flavor along the way. Growing your own green beans costs pennies, takes almost no space, and gives you a harvest that tastes nothing like what's sitting under those store lights. Stick with me until the end, because the harvest trick in this video will change how you pick beans forever. Bush beans versus pole beans, the choice that changes everything. Every green bean seed packet falls into one of two categories, and picking the wrong one wastes your whole season. Bush beans grow low and compact. They produce one big flush of beans over about 2 weeks, then they're done. Pole beans climb, need a trellis, and keep producing for months instead of weeks. If space is tight, bush beans fit in containers and small raised beds. If you want beans all summer long without replanting, pole beans win every time. Varieties like Blue Lake and Kentucky Wonder show up in almost every seed catalog for a reason. They're reliable, they taste great, and they handle heat better than a lot of newer hybrids. There's also a middle option a lot of gardeners skip right past. Half-runners grow a bit taller than bush beans, but never quite commit to climbing like pole beans do. They give you a longer production window than a standard bush variety without needing a full trellis system. If you're still deciding what fits your garden, a half-runner variety is worth testing alongside your main crop. But here's the thing about timing your planting. Get it wrong, and you'll watch your seedlings scorch before they even get a chance to climb. When to plant for a harvest that actually works. Green beans hate cold soil. Seeds rot before they sprout if the ground temperature sits below 60 degrees. Wait until the soil warms up in spring, then get your seeds in the ground directly. Beans don't transplant well, so skip the seed trays and go straight into the garden bed. In Zone 9, spring planting works, but summer heat can stall production once temperatures climb past 90 degrees. A lot of growers get a second harvest going in late summer for a fall crop instead. Watch your local frost dates and count backward about 60 days to figure out your fall planting window. One more thing about sun exposure. Full sun sounds simple, but in Zone 9, that phrase means something different than it does up north. Intense UV rays can scorch young bean plants during peak summer months. A little afternoon shade during the hottest stretch of the year keeps your plants from struggling, especially before the sun angle drops in fall. Spacing matters more than most gardeners realize too. Cramped bean plants compete for airflow, and poor airflow invites fungal problems fast. Give bush beans a few inches between plants and pole beans a little more room at the base of each trellis post. That extra space pays off later when disease pressure climbs during humid stretches. Timing is only half the battle, though. What's underneath your beans matters just as much as when you plant them. Soil that sets your beans up to succeed. Green beans don't need rich, heavily fertilized soil. In fact, too much nitrogen gives you huge green leaves and almost no beans. These plants fix their own nitrogen through a relationship with soil bacteria, so loading up on high nitrogen fertilizer works against you. Loose, well-draining soil matters more than fertility here. Compacted clay soil suffocates bean roots and leads to weak, spindly plants. Work some compost into your bed before planting to improve drainage and structure without overloading the soil with nutrients. A quick pH check helps too. Green beans grow best in soil that's close to neutral, leaning just slightly acidic. If your soil test comes back far outside that range, adjusting it before you plant saves you from chasing problems later that actually trace back to nutrient lockout. Before you plant your next round of beans, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss a video. Now that your soil's ready, let's talk about what happens after your seeds sprout, because the next few weeks decide whether you get a real harvest or a handful of disappointing pods. Watering, trellising, and the mistakes that kill production. Bean plants need consistent moisture, especially once flowers start forming. Inconsistent watering causes blossom drop, meaning your plant flowers but never sets pods. Water deeply once or twice a week rather than giving your plants a light daily sprinkle. Shallow watering keeps roots near the surface, which makes plants more vulnerable to heat stress. If you're growing pole beans, get your trellis up before you plant, not after. Disturbing root systems to install a trellis later stunts growth and delays your harvest. A simple teepee structure made from bamboo stakes works fine, or you can string a trellis net between two posts. Watch for aphids and Mexican bean beetles. Both pests show up fast once temperatures rise. A strong blast of water from the hose knocks aphids off without any spray needed. Handpicking beetles works for small infestations, and checking the undersides of leaves for eggs stops the next generation before it hatches. Fungal diseases show up just as often as pests do, especially during humid weather. Watering at the base of the plant instead of overhead keeps foliage dry and cuts down on issues like rust and bacterial blight. If you spot yellow spots or streaking on leaves, pull the affected plant before the problem spreads through the rest of your bed. Your plants are growing, your trellis is up, and pods are starting to form. But most gardeners get the next part completely wrong, and it costs them their entire harvest. The harvest timing mistake that ruins everything. Green beans need picking every 2 to 3 days once production kicks in. Leave pods on the plant too long, and the plant thinks its job is done. It stops producing new flowers because it's already focused on maturing seeds inside those overgrown pods. Pick beans when they're firm, snap easily, and haven't started bulging with visible seed shapes. That snap test tells you everything. If a pod bends without breaking, it's not ready yet. If it's tough or fibrous, you waited too long. Here's what almost nobody talks about. Consistent, frequent picking doesn't just give you better tasting beans. It directly signals the plant to keep flowering. Skip a few days of harvesting during peak season, and you'll watch your production slow down within a week. This single habit separates a mediocre harvest from a plant that keeps producing for months. Picking in the morning, once the dew has dried, gives you crisper pods and puts less stress on the plant compared to picking during peak afternoon heat. It's a small habit, but it adds up over a full growing season. Succession planting for beans all season long. Bush bean varieties finish their production cycle fast, so don't rely on just one planting. Put in a new round of bush bean seeds every 2 to 3 weeks throughout your growing season. This staggered approach keeps fresh beans coming instead of one overwhelming harvest followed by nothing. Pole beans don't need this same succession strategy since they keep producing steadily. But pairing a few pole bean plants with staggered bush bean plantings gives you the best of both approaches. A steady baseline supply plus regular flushes of fresh beans. Save some seeds from your best performing plants at the end of the season too. Let a few pods dry completely on the vine, then store those seeds for next year's planting. Beans you save yourself adapt to your specific garden over time, which gives you an edge that store-bought seed packets can't match. If you end up with more beans than you can eat fresh, blanching and freezing them locks in that homegrown flavor for months. It's a simple way to make sure none of that harvest goes to waste after all the work you put into growing it. Growing green beans takes almost no effort once you understand what these plants actually need. Skip the heavy fertilizer, keep your watering consistent, and pick early and often. That grocery store bag never stood a chance against homegrown beans anyway. That's all for now. Subscribe to see more.